have a very special session with the award-winning producer and director Oleg for his film about the trial of Oleg Sentsov. We have been very fortunate to review the film, and we look forward to hearing about the trial from you about Oleg the questions that you have related. We have been very fortunate to review the film, and we look forward to hearing about Professor William Chavez, who is we have been very fortunate to review the film, University of the future. Many others. Professor William Chavez, we have go through the rest of your CV. But I think it's important to also note that he has been an advisor on issues relating to our common humanity with the International Committee of the Red Cross, the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime, and many other very important organizations that are fighting for the defense of people who often do not see their rights. Emma Sandon, who has been with us also for the last 14 years, and also a very prominent senior lecturer in film and television at Birkbeck University, and we're always delighted to have Emma because her knowledge is really vast, and for the participants here today, of listening to Emma tomorrow. So I think first to come to you, Oleg, I think one of the things that is obviously remarkable, and we touched on this before, we have mutual friends, Artyom Borovic, for example, who, in a way, there are many of you who fight for the rights of others through the media, but you take an enormous risk. He lost his life, others have lost their lives. Why this passion when you know it can be so dangerous?
Yes, this is difficult because you know, my last film after this was about Novaya Gazeta, which is one of the last independent Russian newspapers, and they have 6 people, journalists and lawyer, killed since 2000, and these people are really in a huge risk, and they do this because I mean they do their job because they cannot not to do this, because they see their I don't know, mission, or doesn't matter what the word he will choose, but they see it's like way of their life.
I mean, in that particular film also there is this argument amongst the editorial staff about the risks that they're undertaking. When you started, did you imagine that this was the kind of life that you would lead, highlighting issues that obviously the state is very uncomfortable about? You know, everything is quite unpredictable in Russia, because it's this system, this regime, they try to frighten people. This is like a state terrorism, and the trick is they randomly choose somebody as a victim, randomly choose Oleg Sentsov to put him to jail, or somebody else. This means for people that you cannot follow any rules. You don't know the rules. Nobody knows, and this is unclear, unpredictable. You are scared more than usually. So when I started making this movie, of course it was scary, because it was a case by Russian secret services, and I know these guys followed the protagonists, the lawyer and the cousin of Oleg Sentsov. Sometimes we met them when in a cafe. They were sitting next to us, watching and making pictures, sometimes outdoors. And sometimes they made provocations against lawyers.
they could enter an apartment when nobody was home, just to check some stuff, and so on. And the only reason was to frighten you, to force you to quit making what you do. So I didn't imagine. I never faced some real danger during making this film or after that. I don't know why, but I don't want to, of course, but maybe not yet. My answer was that this was a showcase, and they want this showcase to be shown. So this is why they don't mind if I show this even in Russian.
I think my last question is a point that you brought up, is that you mentioned about the terrorism of the state. But what's interesting is you've turned that around and used the media that they would like to use, in a sense, to refocus on that particular form of terrorism. I think that's quite interesting. And obviously, you've had this extraordinary access. And I believe some of that footage was from the FSB. I mean, you've managed to use their own footage and change the context. So is that something that is a battle you see yourself continuing?
It took time to find the right way to make this film, because initially we had an idea to which looked as a propaganda, but from another side, and we realized that this is different views. We don't want this to be another propaganda. So you don't see any voice over of me or somebody else. Only some very necessary words of political scientists, and yes, this is. From my point of view, this is how it should work. I mean, documentary, this style of documentary, when you show not only facts, but you show how it was, some details which you catched and was watching, and the audience, people, can make their own decision about this situation. This is what I want audience to make this work too. I don't want to force them for any result. I want to give on this amount of details to work
Thank you.
with.
Bill, can I hand over to you?
Well, thank you, and congratulations on the film. I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you that.
Thank you.
It's a. I was fascinated by what you've just said, the absence of narration in the film, and you effectively let the people speak for themselves, including, of course, Vladimir Putin, who gets to say without comment, he gets to give his explanation. A film like this is intriguing because, as you've just said, the purpose of the trial is to intimidate. Are you assisting them by making the film? I don't mean to be provocative, but I'd like to hear your reflection on the tension in making the film, that by doing that, in effect, you are spreading the message that they want to spread about their trial. I've just been reading the Russian writer Vasily Grossman, whose book, one of his books, has only now been translated into English, about the Battle of Stalingrad, and he is constantly referring to 1937 and the trials that took place in the Soviet Union in 1937 and how they haunted the political life. There was even a sign there of one of the demonstrations that mentioned 1937 there. But it's this, when you have when a trial and when the justice system is being used as a weapon, as it is in modern day, in contemporary Russia, then do people see the film? Are they intimidated when they see the film, or are they angered? What is the reaction of the public? Or perhaps there are different reactions depending on the individuals. I'm very curious to hear your reflection on that.
Thank you. Yes, first of all, of course, I'm in a sort helping the system to spread the message, but maybe in a way. But I think that also for many people who watch this film, the most important, and for us making this film, was very important the presence of Oleg Sentsov himself, because his personality in this film is very important, and his speeches during the court trial are the main constructing elements for this story. And this is very important. And the reaction of people, actually, I only met the positive reactions, and some of the reactions were very strong. And I know people who, after watching this film, they joined the campaign in support of Oleg Sentsov. And now in Moscow, there are a group of people who every day they go to administration of president with different posters. Initially, they demanded to release Oleg Sentsov during his hunger strike last year, and then they started to support Ukrainian political prisoners and then Russian political prisoners, and this started from people who watched this film, and that's interesting. And now, one of the guy who started to support Oleg Sentsov last year, he was jailed, because now in Russia we have a law which forbids to protest without permission, and if you break this law 3 times, you could be sentenced to jail a few years.
There's a moment in the film that I'm curious about. Perhaps you can enlighten us. When he's given the sentence towards the end of the film, and when the judge says you get 20 years, and he turns to his colleague, and they smile. They appear to be happy. What's happening there?
Certainly they don't happy, but it was like a pari. They bet they will get the term that was announced them before investigation started, because Oleg told that when he was detained in Crimea and he was forced to accept all the charges, and he was tortured, and he refused to accept the charges. The investigator from Secret Service said, "You will be sentenced for 20 years in Siberia." And another guy, Alexander Kolchenko, was told for 10 years. So this was exactly the term they finally get from the court. This is why it was for them like a sort of funny.
Thanks very much. It's a massive achievement to make this film. Just thinking about what we're going to talk about tomorrow, and through the summer school we're talking about making of films for around rights, and it will be very good for everyone, I think, to hear about who you worked with and how the process of making the film, how long it took, or what some of the issues were, what you decided to use and not use. You've talked a little bit about keeping it with no voiceover, but how you decided then from filming, who you worked with, and how you decided then to go to the editing stage, and whether you're carrying on filming and if there'll be a follow-up now to the trial.
Thank you. Actually, I started filming after I went first to the court trial, because I knew Oleg Sentsov before he was arrested. We met 3 years before, when we both were beginners in filmmaking. And when he was arrested, it was like a shock for me, because you all the time you watch these cases, you know, there are political prisoners in Russia. But when somebody whom you know personally are being arrested, this turns for you to a personal story, in a way. And for me, it became a personal story. And initially, I went to court trial just to support Oleg somehow, to see him and for him to see me. And I didn't have an idea of how the Russian court was look like. It's pretty fast I realized that it's absolutely show trial, and these judges are just like a Muppets. They have their decisions made long before, and not by them. They just pronounce this, there is no hope for real justice for Oleg and others. And I felt absolutely helpless in this situation, and I decided that the only thing I can do maybe to making this film. Initially I didn't have any idea of how it will look like. I had some good examples of court films, documentaries, but I was not sure that this film should be like the films I know. And I was filming all the hearing, all the court trial, because I didn't know which part I will need to be taken to the film. I was filming all the meetings with the lawyers and Sentsov's cousin and some Ukrainian officials in Ukraine, some actions, protest actions, some film festivals in support of Oleg Sentsov, everything. For a long time, after I started working with the editor, we had 3 editors, and finally it was Michał Lisiulowski, a Polish editor living in Sweden, very experienced, as he started his work with Andrei Tarkovsky very long ago. So I'm very honored to work with him. And I had different ideas, also a narration, also my own attitude to the situation. Also, we had some tests with animation. We had an idea of to reconstruct all the events, to show how it was from the beginning, from the arrest, and so on and so on. But finally, I decided that it's very important to make Oleg's presence, Oleg's words, Oleg's speeches, the main part of this storytelling. So I decided to take off everything that can disturb him, Yes.
Can you tell us how many hours of footage and how long the editing process took?
The editing process took 1 year and 3 months, 15 months, and we had 120 hours, I think, of footage.
So it's very interesting that you talk about thinking about reconstruction or animation. I mean, you probably didn't get any sleep thinking about all those editing decisions. But what you've produced is extremely visually strong in terms of the footage you've chosen from the court. I asked you also whether you carry on filming now and whether you are going to possibly use some of the footage you've got there not used in any further film after this one, or do you feel that the project is suitably represented with this film, which has obviously taken a big circulation around groups, festivals, and creating quite a narrative around the case?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I was thinking about this, and we discussed with our producers making a web doc about this case of Oleg Sentsov, because there are really a lot of interesting materials, not only mine but also some parts of the case. This showcase is one of the first such a big cases in Russia after an annexation of Crimea, and there are many interesting things, and I think some lawyers and human rights organization would be interesting to learn it. So, but still we didn't use it. I started with a new film about Oleg also, but maybe I will use some of old material in new film.
And can I just ask one other question? What is one of the most difficult ethical decisions you've had to make in the process of the filmmaking? Choosing who to show or not show. There are many courageous people apart from yourself who show themselves in the film. So making the decision ethically about what to use and how you related to the people you filmed, what was the most difficult?
In this case, maybe it was not that difficult, because almost all the parts were in public. Yes, and one of the versions of this film, they contained very touching for me scenes when the relatives of the political prisoners meet for the first time and meet each other and starting to discuss the situation. Starting first, they're crying because they have some common problems, and after that they starting drinking champagne. For me, it's something very maybe strange in a way. But no, I don't think I had some ethical problems. Just problems of exact composition of the film, to tell all the different parts of this story, to tell about Oleg as a director, as a person, and also this very complicated criminal case.
There's a little surprise at the end to answer your question. We have a little viewing, a screening, which will be a surprise, I think, to the audience. I hope some of you have questions that you would like to ask. If you raise your hand, then we will hand the microphone to those of you that would like to ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paula. So thank you very much for your work. My question is about human rights abusers. So particularly those responsible for the imprisonment and torture of Oleg Sentsov. And your story, in my opinion, focuses mainly on the victim story. But what about the individuals that are responsible for Sentsov abuse? For example, during the doc, we saw a police officer saying that it is forbidden to film judges, for example. So how important is for you and in your work to expose these abusers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the situation in Russia is now looks like we are very, very far from the moment we could really do something to these people who are responsible for all these crimes. Because now you know, Sentsov's case was one of the first cases, political cases, when they started to use tortures. But now this is very, very common thing. They, even after it was discussed and Sentsov and others, they just told about these tortures. They use these methods more and more almost in every case in Russia nowadays. So I'm afraid we are too far from the moment we could deal with it.
First of all, thank you very much for this extraordinary film. It was fascinating to watch, and I really commend you on the massive achievements. My question is actually also connected to the previous one. Torture is obviously one of the two human rights that's absolutely abolished, and we all know that torture happens in many countries, and Russia is one of them. I was very interested to see that, like, in the court, the issue is actually raised and the state is accused of torturing the individuals. But at no point I really saw that the state addresses that. I was wondering if that happened in some shape or form, or was it completely just brushed away? Yeah, shall I? Yeah. Just whether or not, when the issue was raised in court of torture, whether it was addressed at all, or if people just didn't talk about it, the accusation wasn't dealt with. Yeah, in court. Yeah, yeah.
No, they didn't. They actually, according to the Russian laws, they must to proceed with the investigation after this, but they absolutely ignore this. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think there's a word in Russian for the people who are dismissed. In other words, there's recently the 3 journalists who were killed in the Central African Republic.
Yes.
And the daughter, I believe, of one of them is now trying to pursue this. And there's a word in Russian for people who are dismissed. I can't remember the word, but I think there's a very specific Russian word. So I don't know what it is, but it's a word that means that the people are irrelevant. They are thrown to the side.
I'm not sure.
Next question.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you for your film. I was really touched. And I would like to know what was your relationship with the family of the main character of the film? How you dealt with all that situation, with the mother and the children and the cousin especially?
Thank you. The cousin, from the very beginning, she was involved to this work. She worked in cooperation with the lawyer, with human rights organization, with politician and so on. And it was not difficult to get an access to her. And she, from the very beginning, she accepted me filming this story, filming her. And she's a journalist, actually, so this is why she understood the importance of this work. I was afraid going to the family because it was my very first time, and I had an idea that the family, they just they suffer of this situation, of the tragedy, and I'm going to come with my camera and filming the suffering. But surprisingly, they were very strong, very open, and very. They also accepted the importance of this film, of this process, and yes. So luckily, they accepted me. And you know this scene when Oleg calls from the prison. It was the very first time he called from the prison, and it was unexpected. Nobody, and I didn't know he was going. So I went. It was the very first day I came there for filming.
Any other questions at the back?
Hi, thank you very much for sharing your story. Just a curious question. I was just curious to know: is there a process in which the decision can be appealed within the Russian legal system, or is it final?
Does he have an appeal from the judgment?
Oh.
He was sentenced.
Yes.
20 years. There's an appeal.
Yes, of course, because there are few levels of appeal, and we have the Supreme Court, the last level for appeal, and they passed all these levels. I mean, the lawyer, and all the institutions, they just refused. They confirmed the first this court decision, and now this case in European Human Rights Court. But you know, of course, European Court will decide that this is a fake case and everything. But a European Court cannot cancel this sentence. They only can just fine Russia for money, for a few thousands of euros, and that's it. And Russia will pay it immediately. Yes, this is how they deal with it.
Thank you very much for your film. It was my second time, and I found it just as compelling as the first time. I'm Danielle Bélanger. I was curious to know more about how much you were able to communicate with Sentsov in the process of filming. How you said he provided some input. How did that work, really? And has he been able to see any of your work from this film?
Thank you. You know, first of all, we met because of movies. Oleg watched Sunday on internet my first diploma film, short documentary, and found me on Facebook, and we started to communicate. And this is why after before I started making this documentary, I didn't have a direct communication to Oleg. I only could communicate via his lawyer. So I asked Oleg if he doesn't mind me making this film, and if he doesn't mind me going to his family and his children. And he said, I know you, I know your films, so I believe, no, I trust you, so you can go to my family. I don't mind. But when this film was released, Oleg said that I'm not going to watch your film. I'm sorry. Even he doesn't have an ability actually to see this film in the prison. But he said even if I'm not going to watch it. And I think, of course, this is difficult to go through all this again and to see a film about himself. So this is weird. But you know, now Oleg is in high security prison colony. It's on the north. This is a polar circle of in Russia, one of the northest prisons in the world, I think. And last year I went there 4 times because I was filming his lawyer again for my new film. And I managed to meet Oleg 4 times. We had short-term meetings. First meeting was when he was on his 28th day of his hunger strike, and it was scary, actually. But he was interested in cinema, in his friend's life. He asked me what the films won at Cannes Film Festival. I said, Oleg, you know, you are on a hunger strike. I don't I don't care about Cannes. I didn't follow it. And he said, what? You was going to come to me and you don't know about movies and it's film festivals? And he has many plans. He has many ideas about his new films. And even during his hunger strike, you know, his friends from Ukraine, they convinced him to start working on his film, to direct his new film from the prison. And this is how they inspired him to go on with his life, start working. And he started working, and then he had to finish his hunger strike. But they managed to make this film in Ukraine via his lawyer and via letters, because his lawyer just brought to the prison some photos of casting of some drafts of decorations, some letters from DOP and all the film crew and everybody. So that's very interesting, and I'm making a film about this story.
Hi, thank you also very much for the film. It was very great. I had a question in regard to the appeal that was made by Alexander Sokurov. Was there an appeal directly to Putin after that direct appeal, and have you spoken to Sokurov since that appeal, and what was his kind of feeling?
This appeal was made after Oleg was sentenced, actually, for 20 years. But no results. As you saw in the film, Putin says that only court can make this decision, and you know that this is not true. And that's it, you know. Many famous filmmakers all around the world appealed. The European Film Academy, all the time they just signed petitions of 1,000 filmmakers all around the world, send these petitions, some personal letters to Putin, some open letters, some famous intellectuals, they went to hunger strike for one-day hunger strike last year in support of Oleg. But everything is in vain, because I think that now Oleg Sentsov is he's considered for some trade, you know. Maybe it will be about sanction, maybe some exchange with Ukraine. Nobody knows.
Concerning the hunger strike, what were his demands, and did he get any results from this hunger strike? And I've read it was for 154 days. How did it last this long? Usually hunger strikes end after 90 days. Otherwise, how did he survive all this period?
Thank you very much. You know, yes, last year, 1 month before World Championship, Football Championship started in Russia, in Moscow, Oleg Sentsov went to hunger strike, and he demanded to release all Ukrainian political prisoners from Russian prisons. And as I said, on the 28th day, I met him, and it was really scary because he was skinny and pale and looked very, very weak. But after that, the doctors from the prison, they convinced him to get some supporting therapy, some mix of I don't know, some vitamins or some medicine which supported his life for a period, and this is why he managed to stay on his hunger strike for 145 days. Of course, without it he would die. But finally his conditions got worse, and he had problems with his heart, his liver, and so on. And these doctors, they said that they're going to force feed him, and this means that he would be chained to his bed, and he would be fed with a pipe from his nose, or somehow like a vegetable state, and this is why he preferred to finish his hunger strike.
Any other questions?
I noticed that you said a couple of times that a lot of the effort is in vain, and that you personally felt quite hopeless at moments during the making of the film. I was wondering how you keep the motivation up as a filmmaker, making films that sometimes doesn't seem as if it's going to have any positive impact on the subject matter's life. How do you personally keep motivated and make the wonderful films you do?
Maybe because I'm in touch with Oleg, and I know him personally. Oleg, he's my friend, and it's a little bit different to support your friend, or maybe I use this film to make Oleg your friend as well, because you, after watching this film, you know him better. Yes, and I know this is difficult, and this is why Oleg last year went to hunger strike, because he tried to force somehow this process, because it was like everybody who were in prison, they were forgotten, because time goes, and it's very difficult actually to keep this on focus, because every day you have some new cases, new political prisoners everywhere, you have some new news events and so on, and it's very easy to forget about people who for a few years, 5 years, are being in prison. It's very easy. This is why it's very difficult to find some new way to keep this focus all the time.
We have one more question.
Thank you for your work. I just have 2 points to point out and also ask you. The first, it was very interesting to me to see Putin, for instance, saying that he's not present because of his films, he's present because of terrorist actions. It's just remind me, I'm from Turkey, and how Erdogan tells about the journalists in Turkey. They are not in prison because of journalist acts, but so it's these similarities of these authoritarian leaders of the East are impressive in this way, and also because it told me the Williams are saying that Putin has chance in this film to talk, but it was, for me, it was just to show his argument's absurdity. It was, the scene was not to give Putin chance to talk, but it was just absurdity. So I thought maybe it's the film talks differently to the different audiences that experience these authoritarian figures very vividly, or from outside. Maybe it can change. So did this affected your decisions when the editing process, kind of to whom you are trying to tell the story? This is my first question, and just add a small thing. To the end of the film, Oleg made very touchy and heavy speech in the courtroom, and this was for me it's heavy, but at the same time nice, make me feel nice, like the strong in a way. But you just decided to put this info, a fact about his being present until 2034, I guess. So this fact, I thought, a bit shadowed his speech and truth that comes out from his speech. What was the motivation for you to put this part as a last word of the film? Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Starting from the second question, actually the last frame is again Oleg showing his victory sign. But yes, this is the final. To be honest, we changed a little bit the truth of chronology, because you know, I think it's everywhere. The last word is not going after the sentence; it's before the sentence. But we changed it because this was actually it was really the last word in this case, and this is the right place for this scene. And after that, yes, just some information, because I felt that we need to see the space where he is now, and to know these facts about his further fate. And the first question, is about the audience. Of course, you cannot be good for everybody. You cannot be understandable for everybody in the world. But we tried to be, I mean, me and the editor and our film crew, we tried to be understandable and universal, to be understandable everywhere. This is why we had to explain some simple things sometimes. But of course, this is for somebody who is looking for, who wants to know the truth, who wants to make a decision about this, who wants to have his opinion, who is honest in this.
I think on that note, it's very important, because many of you do, unfortunately, come from authoritarian states where the state is trying to control the media. And I think it would be interesting to hear from you, what are the platforms for you to be able, for people to see, to view the work? From a Russian perspective, how do you get films of this nature to the Russian public?
Well, it's very easy. We have still YouTube working in Russia. So last year, when Oleg went to Hunger Strike, we put this film on YouTube. So people in Russia and Ukraine, they can see this online. I don't know about other countries, if there is someday these platforms are forbidden or not.
And do you see the metrics? Do you see more views because he's back in the news? Do you see more people then viewing the films?
Actually, unfortunately, I don't follow the metrics. But thank you. This is a good idea. It's very maybe important to learn.
I think also I'd like to end on the courage of you as a filmmaker, because as Bill mentioned, if any of you had the chance, for example, to read Vasily Grossman, I believe they didn't exile Grossman, they decided to confiscate his work so it wouldn't be read and there would be no news about it. But there is this unfortunate history of artists being persecuted, prosecuted, and exiled. And I think it takes tremendous courage to take up these causes in such regimes. And there was a little joke as we entered here, because I said to you the name of Alec. He said, "Oh," I said, "Oh, I apologize." He said, "Oh, I've become like him. Even my mother sometimes thinks that I have become him." So I think with big, big round of applause for an extraordinary film and an extraordinary man.
And can I?
And after a round of applause, if we did have a round of applause.
Thank you.
We have a very special present, because we have the world premiere of the next film, and I think it's for you to introduce it. But I would just really like to thank you for allowing us to show this for the very first time anyway.
Thank you. This is the film I told you, but this is not the film, this is the trailer. Yeah, but and we were in a rush to make this especially for today. So I'm sorry for some problems with maybe subtitles and translation. Oh, we did our best. This is the film about film. This will be the film about how Oleg directed his film from the prison. Yeah. So enjoy the screening. And if you will have any feedback afterwards, I will be grateful. Thank you.
Суд приговорил Сенцова Олега Геннадьевича признать виновным в создании террористического сообщества, окончательное наказание по совокупности преступлений в виде лишения свободы на срок 20 лет в исправительной колонии строгого режима.
снимаю как бы в максимально приближенном к реализму стиле, получается. Но очень хорошо, если твое кино успешно, его смотрит много людей, оно приносит деньги, можно пойти купить себе бутерброд с икрой. Но это не главное, ты же не ради этого снимаешь кино.
Хорошо бы с вами поговорить лет так через 20-30. И какого мнения вы будете тогда?
Добрий день, шановні журналісти. Мене звати Анна Паленчук, я кінопродюсер. Сьогодні ми зібралися тут на прес-брифінгу відповідно до того, що ми анонсуємо запуск повнометражного фільму «Номери» за сценарієм Олега Сенцова, там, де є сам Олег Сенцов режисером-постановником. Я йому направила лист з багатьма іменами, прізвищами відомих українських режисерів. І він сказав, що я би хотів, щоб Ахтем Слатаблаєв, мій кримський брат, він так його і називає, зняв це кіно.
Мой крымский брат, мы будем снимать 2 финала, а потом тебе покажем. Ну и выберешь, в общем, какой финал.
Не знаю, здесь это все так относительно, у них же там свои какие-то темы. А вдруг здесь план побед? Ну, я могу сказать, что адвокат однозначно устал 4,5 часа. Сидеть и смотреть, как Олег строчит большие письма, изучает ваши документы. По поводу костюмов, ну там его больше привлекли фотографии, нежели куски ткани, которые вы там прислали.
Я был в Лабытнанге вместе с адвокатом Сенцова Дмитрием Динзо. Я снимаю небольшой фильм о том, что происходит. И адвокат практически все время встречи обсуждал вопросы, связанные с фильмом, который сейчас будет сниматься в Киеве.
Ну что, Дима, расскажите, пожалуйста, как прошло у вас свидание, как он отреагировал на те материалы, которые вы прислали?
С завтрашнего дня, да, он уходит с голодовки, а сегодня еще но плохие показатели у него медицинские.
А какие именно плохие у него показатели?
Ну, у него проблемы с сердцем, у него ишемия развилась.
Ага.
Вот, почки забиты, и одна из почек вроде как в любой момент может отказать. Печень в стадии распада пошла. Вот.
Господи.
И, соответственно, как он будет выходить из голодовки, пока неизвестно. Мне очень понравились ваши фотографии с постановкой, ну, черно-белые такие. Он заулыбался там.
Да?
Да, когда их смотрел. Еще мне понравилась его ключевая фраза, говорит: очень странно наблюдать, когда ты все это держал в голове, потом изложил на бумаге, а потом это все материализуется. Говорит, это необычное ощущение.
Дорогой Олег, я уверена, что когда-нибудь увидишь это видео. Я уверена, что этот мир, который сейчас здесь построен, в котором мы сейчас есть, ты его примешь, и он такой, как ты хотел, и такой, как ты его выбивала из Кирилла. И я очень надеюсь, что все-таки Ахтем с нашим оператором Адамом, они сделают так, как ты тоже видишь.
И внешне, и внутренне. Я очень доволен вашим попаданием в эти образы и сочетанием. Не забивайте голову ничем лишним, чего там нет. Больше мне нечего сказать. Олег, больше нам нечего.
За любовь к профессии, к друг другу, к нашему крымскому брату, который, к сожалению, пока еще не с нами, но я очень надеюсь, что обязательно, как минимум на премьере фильма, по его же пьесе, он будет рядом с нами сидеть в зале.
Спасибо.
Улыбаемся.
И начали.
И что? И что? Я так строю. Не подходите больше ко мне никогда. Погнали.
Что самое страшное может случиться?
Самое страшное? Ну, мне кажется, самое страшное для меня было бы, если честно, для меня будет, если они посмотрят это.
Суд приговорил Сенцова Олега Геннадьевича признать